Hello and welcome to the York Creators Podcast. My name is Ben Porter, and each week you can join me as I chat to someone from York's creative community. This week's guest is Rebecca Saxton. Rebecca is a designer and curator and runs Kaizen Arts Agency, who facilitates social and environmental art and design projects. She's interested in citizen-led placemaking and direct democracy. She enjoys researching and practicing practical innovation across a variety of disciplines to enable the creativity, diversity of perspectives, and ambition of communities to make good change together. In this episode we chat about the numerous projects Rebecca has started over the years, the importance of creative environments for children where they have freedom to experiment, and the magnetic power of knowing your own value and getting out and doing stuff for your community. Rebecca, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Ben.
Hello. So I think we first met in 2015 at your shop on Fossgate. At that point in time, I was running Plastic Fortune, which was my sort of attempt to bring together creative people. You were gathering people there to try and talk about building a network. Do you want to talk me through where you were at that stage in your life, the kind of projects you were running and the shop?
Well, so I just had Arthur was about 2 years old probably when I met you. And in the shop, we just ended up doing loads of different things because people would come and visit and have a cup of tea, and then it'd be like, well, we should do something. What should we do? So we had poetry readings. We had something we did for the Illuminating York with my friend Ian. He did some light and dance stuff. Had installations when we went away for a week, and my friend Julia did a bit of an installation and made some work there, and then ended up having a studio in the back with Evie Leach, who's a jeweller, and we just sort of did stuff. It wasn't really planned or thought about, and then when they sort of decided, I think the council decided that they weren't going to pedestrianise Fossgate. It was all planned to go ahead, and then there was this big meeting. So we decided as a street, I sort of went round loads of different businesses on the street and said, we need to do something, prove that there's a community around here, and then we can really explore that. So we set up the Fossgate Traders Association and Fossgate Festival and just tried to get stuff going, because when you move back from London to York, it can feel a bit
small.
Yeah, and like there's not a lot happening. So yeah, it was just about trying to get stuff going and do stuff.
That was very similar to my experience, because I came from Sheffield, and like the first few years didn't know anybody here. It was like, where are all the creative people? Where's like the cool scene like for people making stuff? And like I could see all my friends on Instagram in Sheffield like tagging each other, all the clothing companies and all the makers, photographers, skateboarders, bars, they're all mates with each other. And it's like, where is York's community? I'm sure it's there, but I just need people to sort of help pull people together.
I think it's like, it's high property prices. It's like shops. I don't know how, I just managed to get a government like startup loan and sorted the shop out because it was quite cheap because it was tiny. We just cracked on and managed to do something. And then you've got something on the surface that people can physically see. I think that's really important. And Sheffield is a lot easier to get spaces that you can commune at and like to come together because of lower property values. So I think York really struggles for that. But you've got an experiences of working with sort of meanwhile spaces. And I think, well, the shop wasn't meanwhile. It was a long lease, and it was all probably done, but it was just something to show on the surface that things are happening, and then people just migrate towards it. It's like magnetic. When you do something in York, people just seem to come to it because it's like Spark as well. Yeah. If you just put something there, people will come.
Yeah. And as soon as it's there as well, you find the other people who are doing stuff because everybody's pretty friendly.
Yeah.
So coming back to the shop, it was called Harper & Carr.
It was.
And you came from like a fashion background, didn't you?
Yeah, so I studied tailoring at London College of Fashion, and me and my friend Greg set up Harper & Carr, which then we turned into kiosk because Greg decided to leave. But it was sort of just having fun making stuff and having a studio in the back. And
what was it that drew you to the fashion stuff in the beginning?
Don't know, just my art foundation, and then it was I figured that no matter what happened in the world, people would always need somewhere to live and something to wear, and food as well. But I wasn't very good at growing food, so I thought I'll either do architecture or clothing design, and then ended up I wanted the skills rather than the sort of facade of what is called fashion, really fast fashion. So I went to do tailoring, which was more of a craft, skill-based, technical learning at London College of Fashion. Was like the only place you can really do it. There's another college in London, but yeah. Okay.
And what were you like before that? Like, were you someone who always made clothes as a kid and stuff? Were you interested in taking things apart, putting them together?
Yeah. Okay. I like working out how things work and seeing if they can be better. Mm-hmm. I guess, and always drawing and doing all sorts of weird things. Are
there any early projects from when you were a teenager? Because
only embarrassing things.
None you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it seems like you got that environment, because I know your brother a bit as well, Luke, and he, obviously I came on to film a mini documentary about him in 2015. There's just instruments everywhere, and he was like picking one thing up and then another. So
you've been in my family house?
I have, yeah. Did you not know that?
No, I think I saw the video.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the kind of environment we grew up in. So Mum and Dad would just let us do anything. There were no boundaries. Like if we wanted to try something, we could try it. My dad was quite like, he's very honest about how good he thinks something is. So it's always mean that we would try and do something better. I think me and Luke have got this like thing where we just think, it's not good enough still, because my dad would be like, yeah, and like give us really critical, honest feedback.
Okay.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
In a productive way.
Yeah, well, it's good that environment existed. Like, I think for me, it was kind of similar growing up in the church family. People would always just give us stuff because they just assumed we could either give it to someone else or make use of it, because I had lots of brothers. So we'd end up with computers and bits of all sorts of stuff. And I remember, like, I took a computer apart when I was about 8 and, like, just to see what was inside it. And I was like, this is like a circuit board and this is a thing. And, like, tried to build a robot out of it. Obviously it didn't work, but at least I kind of got to try that. And that got me interested in, like, computers and technology. And then eventually all the music and film stuff just came from, like, what happens if I pull this apart?
Yeah, I think the environment is really, really important, and it's sort of, I think lockdown's been particularly interesting because kids have been spending a lot more time at home with their parents, like in that environment that their parents have created and that they spend their time in, and it's like this transition between being at home and being at school, and like what kind of creative outlets are kids getting at school at the moment. It's like questionable and slightly worrying, I think, for the future of, like, I don't know, what the government decided the other day. We weren't allowed to teach anti-capitalist ideas in schools anymore. And just like, there's just some really dangerous sort of decisions being made, I think, about what educations are and what kind of environments you can create for kids, so that they can just figure it out themselves. Like, kids just need space to figure out what they want to do and play and try stuff out. I think we've had that environment, and so that we're naturally quite opportunistic, I guess. Yeah. in what on what
it's giving you the confidence as well to look at something and be like, well, I don't fully understand that, but I understand this tiny bit, so I'm going to have a pull at that and see what happens.
Yeah, and like understanding systems of things as well. It's always been quite interesting. Like if you like a skill is like a system. So if you know sort of the premise, or you know the ways, like why something works rather than how, you can work out how by a process of just trying it out the way you think it might work.
Yeah.
Something. I don't know.
So this is all stuff that you're looking to kind of address with Kaizen, which is your agency. You want to tell me about that?
Yeah, so set up Kaizen last year to try and sort of give a bit of purpose to the creative things that I've been doing, a bit of a focus, because I end up sort of just doing stuff without a lot of thinking. Well, some thinking. A lot of thinking. But it was all sort of just sporadic and of the moment, and like from the shop on Fossgate, I set up some studios in Peasholm Green, which then attracted loads of different artists, and we then moved to Pika Studios, which we set up in 2017. But it was all sort of very organic process, and I wanted to try and collate what experiences I've had since moving back to York, and then use that understanding and knowledge and try and do a bit more and approach some bigger problems, because we do all need clothes, but we also in a housing crisis, and we've also got like extreme poverty, and people are starving in the UK, which is supposed to be like a first world leading country. So just trying to tackle some big stuff through the arts, through creative thinking.
Yeah. So I'll come on to the projects in a minute. The name Kaizen, what does that mean?
It means good change, or like a process towards good change.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what does good change mean to you?
Just slowly making things better, whether it's easier or it creates more space for people or more time, trying to improve well-being and people's mental health. Like, we're in a period of massive uncertainty, and it's like just sort of, I think good change means fairer and more just and more equitable sort of environments for people to thrive in, really. But any sort of incremental steps you can make towards that is good change, I think.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of the principles behind design in general, and just actually thinking about what you're doing rather than, here's something that, there you go, it's fully formed. And it's like, no, what happens if we change bits a little bit?
Yeah, and I think it's that ongoing process. It's not just like, this is this and it's finished. I think we think very concrete in the UK for some reason. Like, we don't seem to understand the transient nature of living, and like the temporary ebbs and flows of like how we would naturally be as humans. Like, we make things out of concrete and set things in stone, literally. So I think it's about just trying to understand more about flux and like not having to pin stuff down too much, and allowing room for flexibility and diversity of mind and creating space for that.
Yeah. So this leads well into Op House, which is one of your projects.
Yeah, so we set up Op House. Me and my business partner Alice have been working on it since October last year. Went to see a really amazing project in the Netherlands called Minitopia, who were sort of working with their consultants on the project as well to try and bring the tiny houses to York. The idea is that people will self-build them. York is ridiculously expensive. There's no affordable housing. The council, amazingly, are building 600 new homes, which are going to be, there's going to be affordable housing in that. And Your Space are doing amazing things with community-led housing as well. But we need some, there's no options for young people in the city. If you want, like we were just talking, it feels like we want to just move home and like you need breathing space, or you're not paying however much, like £800-900 a month to a landlord who's got loads of money. So
and loads of other properties.
And loads of it. Yeah, it's just crazy what the system it's just set up to oppress, basically. So the idea with Op House is like anti-oppression and trying to create radical, affordable homes that people want to live in.
What size is a tiny house roughly?
Well, up to 50 square metres is the footprint. The ones in Minitopia go up to 100 square metres, so you can have 2 stories of 50 square metres. But I mean, when you say tiny house, they can go from anything from, we met a woman and her partner lived in a little trailer, and that was like 25 square metres, I think it was. She had all sorts of really amazing space-saving methods, and her bed came out from underneath the bathroom, which was really cool, on these like coasters and stuff. But it needs to be of quality. The idea is not that you it's not about creating spaces that aren't appropriate for you. It's all based on your needs and this sort of empowerment to be able to build something that works for you, not just something off the shelf that persimmons think that you should live in, which is often a not very nice box.
Yeah. Well, that's my frustration with the whole help to buy thing when you're forced to buy a new house. And it's like you buy a house which someone else has built, and like often some of my friends that have got them, they end up with spare rooms that they don't use, and then there's little bits of the things that they don't like. And fair enough, not everything's perfect, but if you have a tiny house which you design yourself, you'll design it to your lifestyle and your needs, and you actually have to think about it before you go into it, which comes back to this whole thing we were talking about before.
Yeah.
About like applying the principles of design to living as well, and not just sort of objects.
Yeah, and it sort of releases you from that day-to-day capitalist sort of all-consuming like routine that we all seem to be forced into, and yeah, it feels like we don't necessarily have a choice over how we live and what we're doing, and we want to create a bit more choice and options and opportunities to be able to like grow your own veg like at the side of your house with you don't have to ask your landlord if you can paint your walls, or like it's just opening it up to doing things slightly differently. The
consumerism thing's interesting because like for me, like, I think I'm fairly conscious of all this stuff, but at the same time I realise that if I've got a room with space, I will fill that with stuff. I will go out and keep buying things. Sort of, you do it subconsciously, don't you? You're out and you're like, oh, that'll be nice for this room, and you bring this stuff back, and it's like, actually, I didn't really need that. Whereas if you've got a much smaller space, it limits the amount of crap that you can buy.
It definitely does, because you literally don't have anywhere to put it. Or you do if you've done some really cool space-saving storage things, but then it's just stuff you're putting in drawers, and why are you doing that?
But the thing that was really interesting to me was the idea of like you do it in an area with other people who have also designed their homes, and there's a community there, and actually you trade stuff for interactions with other humans, which seems like a really good deal. Yeah,
we're trying to work out this way of sharing assets. So if you have experience building, you can skill share, you can show people how you would do something. The idea is that not sort of say, oh, what haven't you got, but what have you got to offer? So it's looking at different financial models. So it doesn't necessarily mean, because there's this stigma that like tiny houses are for middle class children to go and put a tiny house on their parents' land and then burn some logs on a log burner. But the idea is to create a community that's not, it's not just a bunch of hippies. Like it's something tangible, a tangible, different way of living. Challenging some of those dogmas as well.
Yeah, and that links into Yoko, which is another one in York Central.
Yeah, so it sort of started from a group of people who really want to see York Central sort of develop into something more community-led. So we've been sort of running a few projects, and Rich did this amazing illustration for them, and trying to sort of engage with the community around Lehman Road to influence what happens there a bit, because I really believe in co-creation and like people engaging in what's happening in their neighbourhood, and in understanding that they can make a difference and their voice should be heard and can be heard. So it's projects like that are really exciting, that empower people to be able to speak out and say what they feel and what they want for their local environment.
And so coming up, we have York Design Week. So when this is aired, it will be next week. So next week is York Design Week. What should people be excited for?
Well, the whole premise of Design Week this year is all about activism. So how you can, like I say, engage in things that are happening in your local community, and to really show how people can get involved and inspire people with projects that are already happening, that could be happening, and just look at different ways of doing things. So there's loads of different events. There's that the ones I'm really excited about is How to Be More Pirate with Sam Conniff and Alex Barker. If you've not read Be More Pirate, get reading, and then you can and the next book's called How to Be More Pirate, which is all about sort of breaking rules and challenging the status quo, and just looking at new perspectives and different ways of doing things. Because if you look at things from different angles, from different people's understanding, I think you see a whole new possibilities, and
So this is the second year the York Design Week is running, and how has it developed since the previous year?
Well, obviously with coronavirus, we've had to do a lot of the programme online, and we're sort of rather nervously organising some physical events, but we're going to have to see nearer the time like what's happening exactly. But the brilliant thing that's happened is the team has sort of expanded. I think there's like 4 times as many of us now. So last year it was me, Rich and Owen who just were working on it quite frantically. And this year we've got, I think, 14 different designers from across York, and a few from Anna from Glasgow and Millie from Leeds as well. Like trying to bring in these different ideas and really trying to expand what the offer is through new people, new perspectives.
Yeah, I've got a lot of admiration for you guys for kind of putting it on, because it's not easy to organise things like this, and it's not like there's a huge financial reward at the end of it.
There's no financial reward. In fact, we pay for it, which is the fun part. But I think we sort of see it as something it's really needed in York, and I think if we don't do it, it won't happen. So we sort of just say, let's just crack on and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think it is really quite stressful organising events, because you don't know if anyone's ever going to turn up to these things that you put on. I think that's happened in the past with stuff that we've done, and it's just like, it's like quite disheartening. But
you've got to try them. You've got to experiment. If you only put things on which you knew would attract people, they get very boring. Exactly.
And I think we're trying to do something quite different in York and challenge what the perception of York is. So it's always going to be chipping away at an old block and just trying to see what can happen. It's all about asking questions and seeing what can happen.
So if there's someone who's watching this who sort of looks at what you've done and thinks, I'd quite like to get involved in the local community, but I don't really know where to start, what would be your advice to them?
Put some feelers out. Come to a York Creative Social if you can. We're doing York Creatives Cuppa. What are we calling it?
Yeah,
just a cup of tea. It's the first event of York Design Week, and it's just to sort of meet other like-minded people. We used to do socials at Spark on a first Friday of every month.
It would be tonight in a few hours.
It would, but we're just being sensible for COVID reasons.
Yeah.
And you can't sit in small groups of 6. But we're working on stuff to mitigate. Not mitigate. What's the word?
We're working on ways to do it safely.
Different ways of doing things in Corona times, and just send that email, message someone on Twitter, talk to them on DM them on Instagram. If you don't, it's that John Lewis thing, isn't it? If not now, when? It's just taking those first steps and reaching out, talk to people. I just do stuff by talking to people.
Yeah. My trick is to announce I'm going to do something before I do it, and then I've told people I'm going to do it, so I've got to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, I just said, I'm going to start a podcast. And I was like, I've said it now, I've got to do it. Yeah. And I was terrified of being on camera, but I just forced myself to do it, and it gets a little bit easier each time, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I do that. Going to do York Design Week, and then work out how to do it after.
Yeah. But then you find other people get in touch, like, oh, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but don't wait. I wouldn't wait for people to... you're in control of what you do in the future, and you're in control of what you do now. So I think it's just that, knowing that you have the power to do stuff, and that you are you're worth it, and that what you do is valuable, even if it's not necessarily obvious straight away. But yeah, I think knowing your own value and really working with that and being confident and just cracking on.
So what are some of the changes you would like to see happen in York over the next 5 to 10 years?
Better use of public space would be nice.
Better how?
Better how? Not commercialising them, making them more sort of natural, so people can spend time just without having to spend money. I think that's a problem with public space in York. It's often commercialised, and that obviously cuts a huge chunk of the community out that wouldn't necessarily want to pay for the privilege of spending time in public. So yeah, like and more sort of making the city centre more family friendly, I think, and not too heavily influenced on retail and drinking and all these things, like creating a more diverse, sort of fun and creative city centre where people feel like they're welcome and that they're valued, and that we've always talked about this, but an arts centre in York would be really lovely.
Yeah.
Just somewhere you can go spend time. There's no expectation, and you'll definitely always meet someone interesting that you can just talk to. It's that accidental moments that you never know are going to happen. More opportunities to play as well, I think, would be amazing.
Really important.
Yeah, so that's kind of infrastructure-y things. Like I just love stuff like Spark where you can, it feels alive. I think it's about feeling alive, isn't it? I'm from York. I've lived here most of my life, and I think there's this perception that it's quite a quiet town where people go to just have a career and a quiet life. But it'd be nice to see a bit more vibrancy about the place, and feel like we can all do that together. And also more plants everywhere would be really good. Yeah,
definitely. So if people want to find out more about York Design Week, it's yorkdesignweek.com. If they want to get in touch with you and have a chat, can they do that?
Yeah, by all means.
What's the best way to get in touch?
Send me an email, connect@kaizenartsagency.org.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.